Welcome back to the startup stories part that we have every day as part of the Indo-German Startup Week. So you might have noticed that every day on the respective different themes, different topics, we include different startup story to give this practical insight and to hear directly from the founders rather than just talking about what startups should do or should not do, but really hear these stories from the ground. And since today we have the Science Day, we also we will be covering three startup stories or science-based startup stories of or by three different scientists that are here in Germany. And for this particular session, I mentioned it earlier, I announced it earlier, we are cooperating with STEMpeers. So Mayur and Jubin from STEMpeers are there. I know them also for 2 or 3 years, I think even now from different events. Jubin is also one of our GINSEP ambassadors. So it's really great to have them also on board to basically for GINSEP to bring in the scientific community there as well. So as I mentioned it earlier as well, for us it's always really important to have different players in our network to make sure that we are also reaching different kind of audience. And okay, so I would like to hand over now to Mayur and Jubin. Would be great to hear something briefly about STEMpeers. And then I'm really looking forward to the three stories from Pratik, Avni, and Maliha. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Julian. First of all, as a member of one of the global STEM organizations, STEMpeers, we would like to thank the GINSEP team for organizing such an engaging event and bringing this Indian and the German innovators on the same platform and putting this startup week together, and in particular Science Day, along with other partners, including DWIH and Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. Now, at STEMpeers, it's a non-profit organization, and over the last 6 years, we have grown to over 19,000 STEM members that represent the scientists from all across the world. And these members are from the talent from the top academic institutions and the industries. What we do at STEMpeers is essentially, we aim to serve the STEM scientists with their professional growth, both horizontally and vertically, and also support in their development as the leaders of tomorrow. If you want to get in touch with any of us regarding STEMpeers, please connect with us on LinkedIn or through the website. Now, coming to this particular session, which is science-based startup stories. In fact, over the course of last 2 days, what we have heard a lot about is tech innovations, which is bridging the gap between the German and the Indian market. And in the previous session, we also heard about how facilitators are supporting science-based startups. Now, as a scientist myself, the number of startups arising from the ideas originating in the lab still seem to be limited with their own challenges, especially the ones within the Indo-German ecosystem. It is also needless to say how essential a role such startups can play in our daily lives. One of the key examples that you might be aware of as of today, affecting millions of lives across the world, is the COVID-19 vaccine that's produced by BioNTech. It is an idea that actually originated in the lab and is considered commercially very successful. In fact, it was reported last month that BioNTech alone could lift the German GDP by 0.5% this year, which further emphasizes the potential of bringing the ideas from the lab to the market. Now, without further delay, we'll switch on to listening to the young panelists about their engagement in the startup world, both as entrepreneurs and as enthusiasts. We'll have a short talk by the panelists, followed by discussion regarding their strategies in moving their startups further. We would request the participants to type in their questions in the chat box if they have any, and we'll include them in the discussion after the talks. I am Mayur Vadhwani. I'm currently working in Berlin as a strategy consultant at a company called Catenian. It's a boutique consulting firm where we consult the biotech and the pharma businesses. And I'll be co-moderating this session with Dr. Jubin Shah, also a STEMpeers member. Jubin is a business development manager working at Helix in Cologne and a co-founder of the podcast series Success Across Boundaries. He moved from India to Germany after completing his master's to pursue his PhD in developmental and evolutionary biology from the Heidelberg University. And after completing his PhD, he worked at a startup in the Heidelberg area called Biomedics Institute that is a platform between the academia and the industry. He has been very actively engaged with the entrepreneurs and the enthusiasts and also supports them as an advisor. Over to you, Jubin.
Thanks, Mayur. Hope my voice is audible. A warm welcome to all of you who is attending from Germany or from India or from other parts of the world. I think it's been a wonderful experience to participate in this event. Even I found other sessions to be quite helpful for me personally. And I'm looking forward to also today's session. I think the most of the people in today's session are friends. So that's quite advantageous. Maybe without wasting much time, I would like to move to first speaker, who is Pratik Mahalwar. Pratik is the CEO and founder of BioVeg, a startup focusing on microplastics, which is one of the other big challenges. We do hear a lot about viruses, pandemic, but microplastics is definitely one of the big challenges today. Pratik has a background in neuroscience and has pursued his PhD also in developmental biology, but from a Nobel laureate's lab. Later, he moved into EY as a manager, and there he worked for 3 years. I also remember Pratik from our trip to Berlin. We both used to go very frequently. So he's been a friend from there. And over to you, Pratik. Looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jubin. Thanks a lot for your kind words and introduction. So can I share some slides, or is it possible, or? Good. So, I mean, I would usually start by asking, basically, just a minute, screen. So very briefly, that how many of you have washed your hand today? Yeah, I assume all of you, and at least 3 to 4 times till now, and might be by the evening it will be more. And especially now in the pandemic, right? So we are very careful of our hygiene around. But unknowingly, all of us are contributing toxicity to our food chain, to our aquatic ecosystems, and so on. Yeah, how? Let me explain you. So most of your home care products or personal care products, right? They have liquid and solid microplastic. Liquid in the form of thickening gels or polymers or polymers coming out of petroleum, and solid in the form of small beads. Yeah, sometimes these big beads are bigger, which you can see with your naked eye. Sometimes they're micron size, which you put in the cream and lipstick and mascara, and you don't see them as a bead, you see them as a powder, right? And these are all non-biodegradable, and they go from your basins to waterways to fish, and then end up in your food. Yeah, and sometimes they stay in the waterways or in the ocean and destroying coral reefs. Yeah, one of the biggest example is Maldives. Yeah, which you can already see a big effect there. So it's a well-known problem for last couple of 5 and 6 years, and some regulatory agencies have also noticed that that this is happening, and how we can stop this. And they are now introducing a ban in the whole system. So you can imagine in next 5 years, all of your personal care products, including shampoo, hand wash, cosmetics, day-to-day products, will be changed in their formula to have a biodegradable and raw material which is not plastic and not synthetic anymore. So we started by asking this question, how we can help. Yeah? Roughly in 2018, over a beer with some friends from Max Planck, we were discussing, so what kind of solutions are there, right? And then we come across some kind of scientific data from the previous papers and so on, and we have done some more R&D. We even ordered some stuff from Amazon and tried it at home to develop some fermentation and some parts. So we combined biotech and material science on the top from the fermentation, and some molecular simulations to really adjust the material to the end need. So with this, we are able to generate microbeads, which are biodegradable in nature, going from really 1 micron in size to 3 mm. Yeah, we can produce different types. 2 rheology modifiers. So this rheology modifier is the gel which you are using, and we can produce a transparent gel and a white gel and so on for replacing of your shampoos, for replacement in your detergents, for replacement in your creams and so on. Yeah? And there is a big market for this, right? You can imagine there are also big competitors, and we really differentiate with some bigger competitors like DuPont or BASF and some others on the basis of science and chemistry. Yeah, going further, I think one of the main topics in the today is biodegradability, customization, circular economy. So we take raw material, a waste material from sugar industry like molasses, from potato industry the potato molasses, and convert into these useful ingredients. Yeah, and that's not the end. Yeah, we are using the same product, same material to solve some other bigger challenges. So we are currently very active in the plant-based meat scene. You have seen this juiciness coming out of the plant. Then you need some ingredient which holds water and the flavor, and that's exactly what we are trying to provide to the plant-based meat industry. On the other hand side, seed coatings, the seed which you have been using, it has been coated by plastic and non-biodegradable polymers. So we are also trying to help them. And this would not be possible without a great team. So that's my last slide, more or less. And we have a great team of very multicultural team with 2 great angel German investors and a diverse team working in the from Department of Fermentation to Material Science to Marketing and Finance. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratik, for this engaging talk about how essential sustainable development is and how we could essentially include them while thinking about the startup ideas. We do have some intriguing questions for you, but we'll come to that right after the talks with the other panelists. So the next panelist is Dr. Maliha Shah. She is currently working as head of science department at the telemedicine-based startup in Berlin called Alpha Telemed. Maliha pursued her bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania, after which she moved to Berlin to pursue her PhD in neuroscience as well, specifically looking into neurodegeneration. Her work often centered around understanding neurodegenerative disorders, which is something she's also pursuing at Alpha Telemed from the patient rather than the researcher's perspective. I remember discussing the topic of neurodegeneration with Maliha during her course of PhD, as she is a close friend whom I have known over last decade. I'm very much looking forward to what she has to discuss with us. Over to you, Maliha.
Thanks, Mayur. You gave an amazing introduction. I think I can just skip over the first couple of slides in my talk. Thanks to everyone. Hi, Jubin. Hi, Pratik. Thanks for the invitation to be here. I'm going to jump right into my talk because we have a tight timeline. Let me know if you can see my screen. I think it should be visible now. Yes?
Yeah, if you can only make that a full screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna start. So I'm gonna jump right in. It's an Indo-German startup week. So I decided to start on an Indo-German note. I was actually asked by organizers to briefly touch upon my trajectory so that everyone understands the context of Alpha Telemed and how we are expanding to India. I won't take too long. I'm from Bombay. As you said, I went to the States. I did my bachelor's and my master's in neurodegeneration. Came back, worked for a year in SRL Ranbaxy, and moved back then later on to Germany. for my PhD. And that's basically it to my academic track. I then switched from the bench side to the business side, as I like to call it. So I was doing science management for a year, running an Indo-German program for PhDs. And then I did a postdoc at Piramal Imaging. For the Indians amongst us, I'm not sure everyone's aware that Piramal Enterprises actually took over a department of Bayer here in Berlin. And we were doing research, but I actually got insights into the business aspect, and the scientist in me would just love to show everybody these images, because what we were doing was detecting Alzheimer's at an early and accurate stage. And on the right, you see an Alzheimer's brain, and on the left, you see a normal. Anyway, that's as technical as I'm going to get. I'd like to jump right into what we do now. So at Alpha Telemed, we focus on the patients, as Mayur said, and we want to help them at home. So we want Parkinson's patients to not have to go to the hospital and wait hours and hours to get their medicines adjusted. We want to enable them to do it at home. And they do that with the help of our terminals, which are in their living room for 30 days. They're monitored. By monitoring, I mean there are standard tests for Parkinson's. For example, tap a finger. And then for a Parkinson's patient in stage 4, you would see something like this instead of just a finger tapping. And all of this can be recorded at the patient's house and then sent to the doctor remotely, and the doctor can adjust the medication plan. So this brings me to our German project. And then, as I said, it's an Indo-German startup week. So I would like to talk about what happened in India, so to speak. So we switched base to India, and it wasn't actually a thought plan that we want to expand there, or this is my homeland, so let's go there. It started very organically because I gave an awareness talk in Bombay with no mention of the company. There was no marketing, there was no sales pitch. In fact, I didn't even name my company. It was simply to generate awareness about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And we got a huge response, which I will show you in the coming slide. And this enabled us to take 3 trips to India within a year. And we were able to reach out to 1,000 people, or 1,200, as it says over here. And we saw a really great response. So for instance, I believe a picture speaks more than 1,000 words. You can see here what kind of turnout we had at our seminars. And I had never expected that. I hadn't reckoned with it. And we kind of felt that the market was coming to us. So people came to us and said, what do you do in Germany? Can you bring it to India? We would be so happy to work with you. And that kind of set things in motion. We interacted with support groups as well. So not just caregivers and doctors, but the patients themselves. We spoke to them, we asked them what their needs were. And this was a snowball reaction. So from there, we got in touch with physiotherapists and psychologists, doctors, and in particular, a foundation, which does a lot of work in India in this area. And that's where we are at the moment, actually. We're discussing the best way to move forward with them and how to proceed. I'm going to race through the next few slides. I've put these in actually because GINSEP has played a very big role in our company and our movement to India. So we were part of this German-Indian Business Forum in Munich, which was enabled by GINSEP. We were then one of the finalists on an Indo-German startup tour, which took us through Bangalore, Delhi, and a few other places. And this helped us actually to reach out beyond our network. So we met people from other companies, thanks to GINSEP. We also went to Calcutta. It was my first trip to Calcutta again through a GINSEP-enabled event. And interestingly, this gave us a lot of resonance to bring back to Germany. So with all this information we were getting, all the interaction with the patients, suddenly there was a lot of interest from the German side about what we were doing in India and how healthcare runs there and what patients need in India. And we were then invited to be a closing speaker or to give talks at German healthcare meetings and conferences to inform them on what is happening elsewhere. And I'd like to finish off by once again saying a big thank you to GINSEP, because this was the network that was leveraged for us by them. I also have to take out the time to thank our partners and collaborators, not from the GINSEP side, but our very own. And thanks for your attention. And I think later on we'll have a question and answer session. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhya. That was quite interesting. I think one of the interesting points which you mentioned was market coming to you. And I think we should take it up a bit more in the panel discussion. But right now, we'd like to go to the next speaker, who is Avni Sapre. It's very interesting how we met. I think it was during one of the events, a cultural event. And today, like some days back, I realized that she's also a founder. And that's how we got connected again. So just a quick introduction on Avni's side. She's founder of a startup called LabMate, which supports closed-loop AI automation and enables their customers to conduct research, results-oriented research. LabMate received also the Exist Business Startup Grant, and probably I think she would touch upon it a bit more in her talk. And they were also selected by the Baden Campus Accelerator in April 2021. She comes from Mumbai with research experience at TIFR and later moved to Germany to complete her master's. Over to you, Avni. Looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Jubin. I'll just quickly share my screen. So thank you, Jinsep, for the opportunity to represent LabMate in this Indo-German Startup Week. And yeah, so let's dive in. A little bit about myself again for a couple of seconds. I did my master's in microbiology from Ruya College under the University of Mumbai. And then I moved to Germany to do my master's in medical diagnostic technologies. And that's where I came in contact with the LabMate project group during my master's thesis at the University Clinic here in Freiburg. So who are we? We started out as a research project, as I mentioned, of the Bioterra Roland Mettelsmann Foundation here in Freiburg. And in 2021, in the March of 2021, we started off as a spin-off startup of the University of Freiburg with the Gründerstipendium, the founders scholarship, as we can say, from Exist. And we also got accepted into the Baden campus startup accelerator. We are currently a very international and interdisciplinary team with competencies in software, automation, biology, as well as finance. So what do? We, as a biology startup, I would say we are really we do really care about cancer. So a lot of biologists are researching about cancer. And one of the things about cancer is it has a lot of financial as well as psychological effects on the patients. So as of 2020, there have been more than 120,000 cases of leukemia. And usually the therapy is chemotherapy, and when there is no other option left, there are some cell therapies that are emerging, where one of them is the CAR T cell therapy, where the patient's own cells are modified and administered back. And this therapy costs about 375,000 euros per dose. And so it's not affordable. And the reason that it's so expensive is because the production process is highly individualized, highly centralized, and you need a lot of cost-intensive expert knowledge. And one of the solutions that has been proposed is decentralization of this production process, as well as to transfer the expert knowledge to an AI-driven system, which will significantly reduce the costs. So what we do is we provide a real end-to-end automation. So what is end-to-end automation solution? The first step is an automated experiment execution that is partially planned by our AI, which is followed by an online analysis of the cells. And then our AI decides, okay, what's better for the cells to grow, and changes the conditions in which the cells are growing. So in regular state-of-the-art systems, usually you have to wait for an entire batch to end, and then you can only apply the changes to the next batch after some manual assessment. But our system does that in the process, and which means that you save time to go to the next process, then make the changes and help the cells grow better. And also during this entire experimental process, as the number of experiments increases, we also build up our own database, which contributes to our product development and refinement. So this knowledge can be easily transferred to some decentralized facilities which can produce these cells. So in a nutshell, we aim to offer a high degree of individualization and automation as compared to the current technologies available in the market. So how do we get there? We identified some stepping stones and research, starting with research projects, followed by industrial applications with the final goal of a GMP in a box, so a bedside. So taking the treatment to the patient's bedside, that is, the therapy will be produced somewhere closer to the patient. And with our great connections with the research community, since we are associated with the university clinic here in Freiburg, as well as the university, we were able to acquire our first projects dealing with leukemia, one of them being supported by a binational project supported by the BMBF. And looking forward, we also aim to diversify our applications, diversify the application of our solution to other organisms or other industries such as bacteria and algae. So that would be it from me. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the interesting session that lies ahead of us.
Thank you, Avni. Maybe we can just get into some of the questions. Mayur, if you would like to take up a few of them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jubin, and thank you to all the panelists for this interesting understanding of what their individual startups are doing. Just to start with, because I also come from science background, and it is often challenging for a scientist to move into the startup space. So just to understand your perspective, Avni and Prateek, as founders of your company, what was the main motivation behind your startup? When did you actually take that leap of faith to jump from being a scientist to moving on to the other side? Was that mainly because of the discovery, for example, of your product, or just the excitement of becoming a founder and having your startup? So maybe Avni, you can start, and then we can follow up with Prateek.
Sure. So as I said, we are really relatively new startup as compared to BioVec and Alpha Telemed, I guess. But as I mentioned before, that I came in touch with the LabMate group during my master's thesis, and I found the concept really interesting since I was also working with cancer cells. And I thought, why not just all of us get together and found something and work in the direction of, say, the ultimate dream of curing cancer. So I think that was the motivation of starting here.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for me. Sorry.
How about yourself?
Yeah, so especially for me, this is not my first startup. So I have failed previously during my PhD, end of my PhD. I wanted to apply technology into translate technology into a product. Yeah, and we failed very well within a year. And one of the biggest learning was problem. Yeah, so we were not solving the problem by this our amazing technology, and nobody wanted to have our product. So And then I moved to consulting, where I learned a lot of business, and I'd worked with some bigger CEOs of companies like BASF, Bayer, Roche. And I have seen the business from a very close point of view, from the financial angle as well. And then science and business, then it was very, very clear for me after 3 years in Ernst & Young that now I'm ready to probably move into solving a challenge, a problem. My two other co-founders, they were already discussing the problem state and solution. And then I joined them and further take to the next angle. But my main angle was to move towards startup to solve a problem. Yeah. And that's what I was been searching for towards the last year of my Ernst & Young. I have been analyzing different range of scientific problems, different solutions. And out of, as you know, Mayur, that I have been helping a couple of different startups here and there. But I choose to work on BioVac because there's a problem, and this problem also have a purpose, right? And that's why I moved into the startup world.
Thanks, Pratik and Avni. Maybe a quick follow-up question, just to deviate a bit. I realized, Avni, this is specifically for you, that you have also done masters in India, and then you did a master's here. I mean, most of us, at least for me, for example, until I completed my PhD, I never thought, okay, a startup could also be an option. Did you ever think back in India when you finished your master's about this point, or a master's in Germany made a difference?
If I would say back in India, I would have never thought that I would be a part of a startup or be a founding member of a startup. I did have, say, seniors who actually founded startups and were like they did really well, but it was never on my mind. But after joining, say, the course here and also having conversations with, especially during my thesis, I thought, yeah, this is something we can do. This is possible. And it's also you need a lot of support, and especially if you're a science-based startup, then you also need support from the research community and connections to the research community. And I think being at the clinic and also being supported by a foundation which works towards cancer research, it really made an impact.
Thanks, Avni. Pratik mentioned about a point that he understands business. So Maria, this question is for you because you have scaled up to India, and you also mentioned the market came to you. But that was the first step. So how did you decide the next steps that, okay, this is really the market that we should explore? What was the thought process, and how did you go about it?
So yeah, I'm trying to think how to put it best in context. As I mentioned, it wasn't a pre-planned strategy. So we didn't say, oh, I'm from India and it's logical to move there, or let's try it out. The idea was actually to, it was a bit philanthropic. Actually, it started with my mom saying, oh, you're down here on vacation. Why don't you talk to all my friends and give them a presentation about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's? And I thought, okay, why not? And then from there, it became a talk at a club at which we're members. And I went in there expecting 10 people maybe, or 15, right? And then the organizer came to me and said, Madam, we have more than 200 people. We're running out of chairs. And I thought, wait, why are they all coming for my talk? It's on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And that was kind of like the aha moment for me, because I never really thought about the demand in India. And then, I gave the talk, of course, and within the talk, I met like neurologists, physiotherapists, psychologists, somebody from World Health Organization. I didn't even know who was in my audience. And then I remember I was flying out the next day to come back to Berlin, and they said, why don't you stop by a patient support group? And literally on the way to the airport, I stopped by, and then I interacted with 40 patients, which is, in Germany, it's difficult. It's almost unthinkable to just have 40 people right there, like spontaneously. And then as I spoke to them, they said, why don't you think about bringing it to India, adapt it a bit, whatever you're doing there, why couldn't you do it here? And again, it was a second aha moment. And I thought, yeah, why couldn't I? I totally could. And then that's what triggered us to come. And then, of course, when we came, we just started the same way. We gave talks, we met people, and we listened. We asked people what their problem is. So Parkinson's is the same, whether it's a patient in India or it's a patient in Germany, but the environment is different. So in India, we talk to the caregivers more. We talk to the children, we talk to the wives, husbands, whoever else. In Germany, it's very difficult to access a patient, and then it's almost impossible to talk to someone else about it because you're violating data security and data privacy. So we had to just switch our focus a bit. I don't know if this is answering your question, but this is exactly as it happened. We spoke to people, asked them what they needed, totally revamped our German concept. So what we're doing in Germany with the home monitoring is not at all what we're doing in India. It's very different. But that's how it came to be. And I have to say, I got a lot of support because Avni was talking about the support that you need. So I got the support from my company, which is entirely German, and I'd never thought about India until I joined and came up with the idea. So without their backing, it wouldn't be possible either.
Thank you, Malia. I think one important takeaway from this point is about listening. I think you need to listen to what people need and what needs to be done. I think that's very important. Mayur, maybe if you would like to go ahead with a few other questions.
Yes, one another point which I would like to mention and which Maliha put very clearly was the patient-centric approach. I think often while taking the startups further, we sometimes forget to put the end users in focus. And this is where some of the startups seem to fail. And this is what Prateek also illustrated in one of the reasons why his earlier startup failed. Just moving on to a different question, because we do have a question coming from an audience. Going back to Prateek and Avni, because you're dealing with a German system where the bureaucracy is thought to be quite challenging. What were your challenges concerning bureaucracy in setting up your business here? Could you elaborate a little bit over that? Maybe Avni, you can start first.
Yeah, so we are right now in a pre-seed stage. So yeah, but still paperwork is a big deal. And so we are looking forward to establishing our own GmbH. And it is a process, I would say. Me as a biologist, I am, to be really frank, me as a biologist, I am not much involved in the paperwork, but when I see my colleagues who take care of all the administrative stuff, then yeah, sure, there is a lot of paperwork. So just digressing a little bit. So for example, when we were applying for the BMPF grant, the project that we got, so we were still doing the paperwork for it, filling out a lot of questionnaires, a lot of giving out a lot of plans, for example, up until, say, 1 week before the deadline. So constantly there is new paperwork coming up. You have to keep up with it. The German system is very black on white. You need everything on paper, otherwise nada. So but I think, yeah, bureaucracy does make it a bit difficult. But I think Prateek would be able to answer this way better than me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if I just look from an angle of ease of doing business, right? So setting up a company, there's a very structured process here in Germany. And I think in last decade, especially, Germany also realized that let's not put too big hurdles for startups to be incorporated. So they have come up with different models. Like now you can start a company. You don't have to set up a GmbH. You can start a company as a UG with €1. This is exactly what we did, right? So because you don't know whether you're going to survive long term or not, so you start as a UG, and we are still UG today. We are doing business with BASF. We are doing business with some other bigger companies. I think those times of having not using the UG and directly jumping into GmbH is gone. So it's more around the ease of doing business. I think it's changed a lot regarding paperwork. I mean, I would say there's also a similar bureaucracy in India, right? If you need to set up companies, you need to do all kinds of tax filing and all these kind of structures which are available everywhere. So I don't think that there is a bigger burden on that side. However, if you are a foreign immigrant and you need to hire people or co-founders who are also from the other side of the globe, we have faced a lot of challenges in terms of visa, especially during COVID, to bring people here and to get some visas done. So that's the area where we face a lot of challenges, and we got some help as well. The local offices in every city have wings for supporting startups, right? So in Osnabrück there is a wing which from the city council, their work is to only support science-based startups, and they helped actually a lot. They reach to the head of the foreign immigration office and basically connect us and push our case further. So there are solutions as well, but definitely the bureaucracy in terms of visas and so on is something which is quite at a high level. But rest, I think it's improving a lot, in Germany.
Thanks, Pratik and Avni. Maybe before we go to the next question, I also have a couple of points here. So in my network, I have like 3 to 4 founders, all from German background. And what they also mention is the addition to being a founder or coming from a science background, they also take up law as one of the courses because of so much bureaucracy, and that is required. So that could be helpful. And what Pratik was mentioning, I think every city or every Bundesland has this small offices where you can approach, and if they find you trustworthy, I think they would be more than happy to support. So those could be very important points. With that, maybe over to you, Malia. I think we would also like to hear a bit more. Did you also face some challenges when you were thinking, hey, okay, we did this session, but we would like to do the next one? Did you face any challenges during that time?
To be honest, I would have to say I faced surprisingly few challenges. So I had expected more, and maybe that was the main take-home message, that I expected a lot of challenges. We're talking about bureaucracy also in India. I expected a lot of issues, and I have to say I was really positively impressed by how smoothly and how quickly things can move in India. So if I decided, or not I, if it was decided by doctors and me that we wanted to discuss something, the appointment would be given the next day. So then maybe they would tell me, sorry, it doesn't work out for us, or yeah, it's a great idea, let's take it further. But the timelines were actually much shorter than what I face often here in Germany. It's not a criticism for Germany, it's just that here we deal with health insurance providers. In India, you're talking more directly with your end user because people are paying out of pocket. So you talk to the clients, in this case, the patients or the caregivers. In Germany, the timelines are longer. So actually, I would say more of the challenges were those that we faced back home in Berlin. Talking to health insurance would be one of them. You have to really be ready to have a lot of patience, and I'm talking of a year or two until you get the appointment with them, you talk to them, you see what's going on. And given this background, when I moved into India, I was like, oh, wow, this is moving fast. On the other hand, I would say a general challenge with India is if you don't live there, as I don't, I live in Berlin, and you have a limited amount of time because you're focusing on 2 different things, then that's probably more of the challenge. India is a big country. India is a multilingual country. So until now, most of the work we've been doing has been on the Western coast. I'm from Bombay. And as my last name says, I'm Gujarati. So these are the natural connections. It's easier to give talks where you have people that you know. And Goa as well. It's a day trip from Bombay. But then, and this is why I specifically wanted to thank GINSEP, we would never have thought of Calcutta. It's the other end of the nation. I don't speak Bengali, unfortunately. But we got taken there because of the GINSEP event. And then suddenly we have a network there as well. So if and when COVID allows, we would like to go back there. But to sum up your question, there were very few challenges. And I think it's part of the mindset. If you expect it to be more difficult or really trying, you might sometimes be positively surprised at how smoothly things go.
Thanks for the answer, Maliha. I think that was very clear with your answer. Now, I would just jump a little back to both Pratik and Avni in understanding, because their startup are at slightly different stages at the moment. Avni's a bit more earlier and Pratik's a bit more advanced. Just to understand your priorities at the moment and where you would like to take them moving forward. What are the most crucial steps that you would like to tackle at this moment, depending on the stage of the startup that you are currently at? Maybe you can give some insights, Pratik, before we move on to Avni here.
Yeah, I mean, we have raised seed round last year. And using that seed round, we have established our small facility, a pilot plant, with which we are providing samples to different customers, bigger customers like L'Oreal, Henkel, and so on. And the next step is basically to raise the next round, to hire more people, to get a bigger structured pilot plant, and provide bigger samples, right? So raising more money next year, and providing bigger samples. So there's already a clear traction for the product, and there is a need in the market in higher volumes because of the regulation. So these are the two major points, yeah, raising money and providing bigger volumes by the end of next year.
How about yourself, Avni? That seems to be quite clear path forward for BioVeg, especially.
Yeah, so currently we are in the process of a lot of planning, I would say, especially with the business case, for example, or what do we want our product to do. And on the side, we are doing some product development, some internal product development, and also then going with strategic planning, with some financial planning for the next couple of years. So, for example, the project, the BMBF project that we have in hand it will last for 3 years, but then that is not enough to sustain yourself, right? So in the panel earlier with the technology transfer, one of the speakers said, yeah, you can't just rely on one project or one thing to fund yourself. So we need to also look out for projects. And that's why we are looking to diversify where our product or our solution can be applied to. And that's why the bacteria and the algae market. And I think we are really lucky to have some connections to the research community, since the research is the first market we want to target. So right now our priority is to find projects that align with our product, or where we can apply our product to, and also potential customers, obviously.
Thank you, Pratik and Avni. I think you already led us to the next question, which I wanted to ask. How did you find the first customer, or what would be your recommendation going into that direction? That even for other young founders, the key is to find the first customer. And how do you go about that? So maybe we can start with Pratik, then Maliha, and then Avni.
Yeah, we participated in a couple of incubator programs, right? So which are clearly validating our problem statement, right? So there are programs which are specifically running for different kind of like sustainability or AI and so on. So we participated in a couple of programs to validate our problem, to validate how big is the problem. And when you're validating this, you come across many customers, right? And then you tell them that what kind of solution you have, and that helps you to provide them samples or run some pilots with them and so on. And we were always very authentic to them in terms of what we can deliver and what we were promising and at what stage we are, and also open to mention that let's do a little bit of an agile development, right? So that you give us feedback and we'll improve and come back to you. So that's helped us a lot. But beside this, we should not forget that I worked in strategy consulting, which was generating a lot of working mostly with the different CEOs, and so we had a big network there as well from that, and coming from the top, yeah. So I reach out to my network and spread the word that we are doing this. And if anybody is working on solving a similar problem, please reach out to us or reach out to me. And last but not the least, we had possibilities to get money from different investors, from VCs, from corporates. But in the end, we choose 2 angel investors who not only who are not as a background a scientist, but also worked in the business. So we also explore their network in order to get some customers, bigger names. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratik. Maybe Malia, if you can add a few points there.
Yeah, sure. In fact, maybe I would start with another question and say the first step is to define who your paying customer is. This is speaking purely from my experience. When we started in Germany, we thought quite naively that we would approach the doctors because, it's the doctors who are giving the medication and they're changing the plans. And it became very clear to us that we will approach the doctors, but they are not going to be the paying customer. The paying customer will be health insurance. I think I already pre-answered the question about, and I think they do great work, so I'm really not running down German health insurance, but there are 91 health insurance providers, or there were at the time we started. So you have to talk to each one independently. You get a foot in the door and know whether it's relevant to them or not. So it can take time. With India, also naively, we thought, we're talking to all the patients and we're listening to them and the patients know what they want. But we realized that they would also not be the paying customer. The paying customer would be the family member or the caregiver is what we refer to it internally as. So for me or for us at Alpha Telemed, the key learning was be ready to realize that who you think your first paying customer is may not end up being your first paying customer. Be ready to respond relatively agilely. And then the actual answer, how did we find them? It's simply a question of perseverance. So if you're not ready to knock on many doors and be told no, or we're not sure, or come back again in autumn or in spring or whenever, then it's going to be tough. But if you don't take it personally and you keep at it, and you're also always involved in your scene. So we try to be very active in the neurodegeneration scene. We try to be present at conferences. We try to do outreach, and then you're not forgotten that quickly. And then over a period of time, people remember you. The company is not new anymore. It's kind of a sign when you don't need to introduce your company anymore because they've already heard of you through someone else that they've met. And I think this all eases the way to getting the first paying customer.
Maybe Avni, if you would like to add a few more points to what you already mentioned.
Yeah, so Pratik and Mali have read my mind, I would say. Or I would just quickly sum up and say your paying customers are closer than you think they are. So just look around. They might just be your colleagues. For example, in our case, our research labs are our colleagues and our first paying customers as well. And again, patience is key and good old-fashioned cold calling. So that's what also gives you a feel of what people want. And if your idea is actually real. So we did have some we did some calls and then people were like, yeah, come back to us in a while maybe. And that's the thing, losing patience is not the way. So have patience and to persevere, as Malia said, is important. Yeah.
That's actually very insightful from all 3 of you. I'll just shift the gears to one of the questions that's asked from audience, and maybe I would move on to Pratik because he's currently in that particular stage. And Pratik, you also did mention that you decided to choose 2 angel investors who were scientists at some point and also had some business experience. So what besides being a scientist, what besides funding did they actually bring in?
I mean, there are different buckets of people who are trying to fund you. One is the government-based investor or institutional. Then one is the pure VC world. Then one is the corporate companies. And one is the angels, right? And you don't want pure money. Just money will be, you can get it from anyone. out of all of them. Then you have to compare what else they are bringing. So VCs usually comes with a very strong financial structure. They provide you a little bit of structure, financial background, help you to grow further and so on, but also very, very stringent. And you have to really understand whether this is the right VC for me or not, because if they don't understand your science or your process, you will have conflicts with them when you fail. Yeah, when you say, okay, this I try, we have been, sorry, there's a construction going on, and those are the signs of growing up. So there is a little bit of a voice in the background. Then you will have conflicts in terms of people not understanding where you are failing, and they can also try to help you, because it's once you have investors or somebody have invested in you, now it's also their job. They are adding up to the team to provide you ideas how to solve problems, right? So and regarding corporate investors, we try to avoid them in the beginning, because then you get a label, yeah, that this company belongs to BSF or this company belongs to a buyer and so on. And then the other customers will be hesitant to do business with you, yeah, if you are part of one of the venture corporate firms in the very beginning. So we come across, I took this problem to one of my previous mentors, who really loved the problem and looked at the whole data bank, or all the documents which we have gathered, and they, within 48 hours, they said, we would like to invest the money. And we were shocked that they are ready to invest their own personal money, same amount what VC is ready, because they strongly believe in the idea. And why? Because they understand the science behind it. Also, they understand the value behind it. So you are in the price of one, you are getting three qualities: investor, science understanding, and also the business context. And we were very happy. We immediately took the offer from them. Yeah. So that was because if we fail during the process, yeah, and that's definitely going to happen, no matter what kind of startup you are doing. You are testing with customers, or you are doing a science startup. You are trying new processes, new ways. So you fail. Yeah, that is a natural phenomenon. But other person should understand. And when you are failing, the money is also going there, right? So you are burning money. Usually VCs see this as a sign. Oh, why you are burning so much money? You have to be very strategic and so on. But you have to try. Before trying, you don't know whether this is going to work, right? So some kind of a balance between financial controlling and people believing in ideas. Yeah. So that was the vision, to get the right investors on board. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pratik. I think we are just getting a bit at the end of the session. There are just 2 minutes left, so I think we can conclude with last remarks from all of us. Maybe a quick point from my side. So I think I've seen a change where previously it was quite difficult if you had a real science-based idea, that if you pitch to someone, people would say, hey, I don't want to listen to it. But the time has changed and people are ready, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in India. So I think that change is important. And that's where organizations like IGSW are helping a lot. So that would be quite helpful. With that, I would like also others to give your final remarks, and then we can hand it over to Julia. Mayur, if you would like to go next, and then we can pick up from all the speakers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jubin. I think this was very interesting conversation that we have since the last 1 hour, understanding about startup challenges from a very young startup enthusiasts here. So thank you very much to all the panelists, and also IGSW for partnering with STEM peers for the science.
Pratik, if you would like to go next, and then Malia, and then Amni.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, IGSW. Thanks, Stampiers. And I think I would love to see more science startups coming out. Happy to help. Feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. Happy to share my experience and happy to share my contacts as well. Thanks a lot for having me here.
Malia, if you would like to go next.
Yeah, actually, I am thinking of what to say in 30 seconds. I have 3 points. So the first is thanks, GINSEP. It's been informative for me as well. The second point is to everybody that I don't see and who's part of this conversation. As Prateek said, feel free to reach out to me as well. You can contact me at LinkedIn, or my email and my WhatsApp are also available via GINSEP. So looking forward to hearing from you. And the third part is I was listening to what Prateek said before about investors and funding. And so I'm going to say something which is politically probably incorrect, but in my experience, I prefer having investors who have nothing to do with science, because they leave you free to do what you want to do. So again, it depends from person to person, but if you have someone with, and I'm not talking about our investors, right? This is a general remark, but you have somebody who's got a background in sports, or they have a background in construction, there are many advantages, because they're not going to interfere with your experiments, your approach to a doctor, your approach to anybody, because you know best in their eyes. And secondly, this is the politically incorrect part. I think the funding that science startups are looking for is really not much for somebody who has a legacy in football, or a legacy because they have an empire of like buildings in 10 countries across different continents. So it's also different for them. They usually see pitches for huge amounts of money. And then if you go in asking for, not like tens of millions, you have a better chance, because that's not who they normally see. They're usually seeing other people putting up a building or putting up a mall. And then the kind of money we're asking for is nowhere in that league. That works to our favor. I crossed 30 seconds. Thanks, everyone. That's all.
Thanks, Malia. Avni, if you would like to say a few quick
I'll
words.
be real quick. So first of all, thank you, GINSEP and STEM peers. And so one thing I would just like to say is, if you're a researcher, don't underestimate your idea, because it can take you places. So just take the leap and believe in yourself. It might sound very philosophical, but it is what it is. So all the best to everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Julian, we are just a couple of minutes late, so we apologize for that. And over to you. Thanks again for inviting us.
Thank you very, very much, Jubin and Mayo, for moderating that panel and also for organizing it. And of course, also thank you to all the three startup founders, Maliha, Prateek, and Avni. It's been really, really interesting. And particularly these stories from the ground, from the field, I find always so inspiring. And this is not only myself who finds it inspiring, but also that's what we found out at GINSEP, that this is very important to communicate, to show the people out there that there are other startups. Let them be very early stage startup that have just started. I've a great example for that, just now in early 21, setting this up. Or also a little bit further further advanced startups already. So this is really encouraging and helps other founders or potential founders that are thinking about taking that road. It really, really helps them and encourages them. So I find these startup stories always super interesting, and particularly your three. So thank you very, very much for that.